defined and so forth as a man, So there will be some women, and this is S, by the way. Um, well, let me read. Okay, well, actually, S is, I would choose to associate with the few women who actually enjoy true gender equality. So yes, there would be some women who would not want to go back to just submitting to a man and being seen as not just physically but also mentally weaker. Uh, there are some women who would want to continue to be seen as being as tough as a man and who would want to be treated equally, even if it means that that I go hard on you verbally, mentally, when you're not up to par, and that I really lay into you when I think you're not making sense, as opposed to just saying, "Oh, she's a woman," she's doing what women do, and just accepting something that I wouldn't accept from a man. So some women really would want true gender equality, including the harsher aspects. And those are the types of women that I personally would choose to continue to associate with. Um, and my final point in my actual response to God, if He were to confront me about my support for gender equality, is I look forward to being brutally honest with the few mentally tough, rational women. And that's actually quite similar to S in the previous point. Um, so I guess I should have just kept them as one. But I do look forward to being able to be brutally honest with a few women who are not victims of rapid emotion and where I don't have to water things down when I talk to a woman. I can say them the same way I'd say to a man. I'm really not one for locker room banter, that type of conversation. But in terms of serious issues, I don't want to have to nurture your emotions, women. And if I don't have to nurture your emotions, if you're not an emotional type of person, then I like you. I just don't care to nurture your any emotions. I really don't. Emotionalism is one of the biggest problems in today's society. So, let me see. Yes, this is my final page. Okay. So I now have what I'll call the Sodom scenario. So in the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, Lot says, "Hey God, if I can find this many righteous men, will you spare Sodom and Gomorrah?" And God says, "Okay, you can find that many righteous men, 50, 20, 10, go for it." It finally gets down to one, and God says, "Okay, if you can find just one righteous man, then for the sake of that one man, I will spare Sodom and Gomorrah." Uh, and Lot couldn't find even that one. So, of course, God destroys Sodom and Gomorrah. Just so you know, when I was in Christian school, I did a book report on some book that mentions various uh, archaeological finds that support different Bible stories, and that book did mention that some large deposit of tar with a city underneath it had been found, and that they believe that um, that was the former Sodom and Gomorrah. Uh, that's just an interesting little side note there. I don't know what that book was called, but there are various archaeological finds that seem to support different Bible stories. I know Noah's Ark has actually been found on Mount Ararat in present-day Turkey, but I don't want to get too far off course here. But anyway, so God tells Lot, "Hey, okay," or was it Abraham? I think it was Lot. It's been a while since I read that particular story, but anyway, God says, okay, you couldn't find even one righteous man. Okay, I'm destroying the city. So I can imagine that if I were in this conversation with God about why I support gender equality, then God might say, okay, Eric, show me one sufficiently rational woman. And if you show me one sufficiently rational woman, then you're off the hook. So it wouldn't be a matter of God is going to destroy this or that city if I can't find one rational woman. It would be God is going to destroy me if I can't find at least one rational woman. So the stakes are a little bit higher. It's not those guys over there that are going to get killed. It's me. And I'm not saying that's God's plan, but when framing my thoughts around how an exchange between God and myself might go, I just have to think about that. I can't just blow him off like he doesn't matter when I'm taking a stance that is diametrically opposed to what I know is his stance, or at least I have very good reason to believe is his stance. Okay, so I've got to be able to find at least one sufficiently rational woman in order to justify to God my support for gender equality. So I can imagine that any woman out there who sees his video might ask, okay, Eric, would you say that I'm rational enough? Well, I don't want you to put me in a position where I have to hurt your feelings. Uh, I mean, if you put me in that position, I'll go ahead and hurt your feelings. But I don't want you to put me in that position. I'm putting it in your hands, not to have to get your feelings hurt. So it's just simple. I would gladly take the time to talk with you about the various reasons as to why I say that God is a harsh God and that He is a God of necessary evils and I've already stated some of the logic for various stances of mine and why I believe that God did this or that harsh thing. It's woven throughout this entire playlist, but I would gladly, do a tutorial with this or that woman where I say, let's go to this scripture and that scripture and talk about what it means. And let's talk about why we even believe the Bible at all, as opposed to just assuming that everything in the Bible is correct. We can talk about how to deal with what might be incorrect, how to determine what might be incorrect, and on, and I'll talk for hours on end, as this playlist proves. And I'll hear you out as well, which this playlist doesn't prove. But anyway, at the end of that process, if I know that I've said enough to where you should be able to understand that God is a hard God and you should be able to understand why He's a hard God, and if you still try to tell me that He's some kind of sweet God and that love is His primary attribute, even after I've given you all kinds of evidence to the contrary, then I'm going to say that you're not rational enough. And so, normally I don't tell people you have to agree with my stance, otherwise I don't like you. And I'm not even saying that now. But if I'm going to go to God and say, hey, that woman over there is sufficiently rational, then I don't want God to be able to shoot me down quickly, or shoot down my assertion anyway. I mean, quickly. I want to be able to know that that I'm correct when I say that. And if you are, as a man or a woman, are too emotional to wrap your head around the idea of God being a hard God who, when He says He wants to be feared, doesn't just mean respect or reverence. He means He wants you to be afraid of Him, even if you're doing right. Job was tortured even though he was doing right. God himself said Job is a righteous man, and then God himself gave Satan permission to do all kinds of harm to Job. Okay, so and there's all kinds of stuff I could say to support the idea of God being a harsh God. But while I normally don't dismiss people as a possible friend or associate of some sort because they have a different stance than me on this or that issue, and while I'm not saying that I won't necessarily associate with you, I definitely will not. Uh, I will not tell God or anybody that you're sufficiently rational if you can't wrap your head around the idea of God being a harsh God. Uh, oh, and the final thing is that you have to be able to have frequent, fluid conversation about it. You can't just be a one-off thing. You can't just be, okay, I'm going to do this one time for 5 minutes just to get Eric to qualify me as sufficiently rational. And so, no, it's got to be something where no matter how frequently it comes up, you have comfortable conversation about it. And throughout this playlist, especially in this final video, I can't say with certainty that I won't do another one, but I don't plan right now to do another one. I'm hoping this is the last one for this playlist, but if I feel so compelled in the future, I may go ahead and continue. Uh, and but within this video, just in the way that I've spoken, the way that I am not emotional and not upset when I talk about God being harsh, you have to be able to basically speak in the same way. Speak in the same calm, even tones in which you hear me speak as I talk about God being a harsh God who does good and evil, who forms light and creates darkness, who puts people in hell, puts men in hell, puts men in the lake of fire, uh, tortures guys like Job, who God himself said was a righteous man, and on and on, okay? And to be honest with you, a lot about the way God created us is his form of preemptive torture, I believe, okay? God didn't say it to me. I'm not going to misrepresent him in that respect. Um, and I hope that I'm not wrong about him. But anyway, so God, he his ways are not completely built around the idea of anger, and maybe not at all. I mean, he gets angry, but what I mean is, just like the story of Job, how the main point is that God doesn't have to be angry to make your life hard. Uh, God can compliment you to Satan and then give Satan permission to do harsh things to you. But I said way back in this playlist that I believe there was a time where God was a disembodied soul hovering in the vastness of space. I don't know if it was the blackness of space or the whiteness and he made it black, but whatever the case is, I believe he was a disembodied soul who imagined everything and then proceeded to create everything. Um, and before he created any people, I believe he knew about the range of motion within each mindset, and he knew the types of things that people could and would do and would choose to do. I don't believe he gave us free will. He gave us an ultimatum: either live the way he says live, or spend eternity in the lake of fire. But I'm actually a little pissed off at people who always talk about God having given you free will. No, God gave you an ultimatum, and if you choose what God didn't want you to choose, you're going to pay. You could pay eternally, but again, anger is not even God's most powerful uh, form of of communication or decision making or what have you. Uh, but God actually was able to think so many things through before creating any person. And as he did that, I believe, he determined that because the mindset that he would eventually call woman was weaker than the mindset that he would eventually call man, or the male mentality, um, that he would put the woman in a weaker body as well. So the this mindset A was stronger than mindset B, and so God decided to embody mindset A in a more powerful body type than mindset B, and so forth and so on. But that's just one example of the various things that God probably preemptively did before, or preemptively decided before creating anyone, where he just said, this is what I think of this mindset, so I'm going to embody it this way. This is what I think of that mindset, so I'm going to embody it in that way. These are some of the hardships that I want to define life. So I'm going to put this necessity over here and that one over there, and make people run around in order to find these different necessities and so forth. But God didn't have to depend on anger to make your life hard. Uh, and God was able to limit the abilities that certain types of people would have simply by how he made his creation, So it's kind of a difficult thing to explain, especially since it's on a level that most people don't like to think on. So, but I'm taking a stab at it nonetheless, you know. And I guess the final thing I'll say is that it's probably going to hurt a lot of feelings, but I believe that one of the reasons that God made women at all, because God could have made His creation any number of ways. I don't know all the ways in which He could have created. We know what we've seen, we know what we've studied, but we don't know what else was possible. And God might have been able to make neuters one mindset, and then made us neuters that didn't have to count on copulation in order to propagate the species. I mean, there are some creatures that are neuters. Humans are definitely not. But we don't know how else God could have created things. Uh, but He could have put just the male mindset in the world. And if God had never created any women, and if the idea of a woman never had existed, and the idea of uh, man to woman copulation had never existed, then you probably wouldn't miss it. You only miss it because you've seen it, and you know that it exists, and you know what's possible within the current creation. But I do believe that when God decided what types of mindsets He would create, that he probably decided that one of the reasons for which He would create women with the female mindset that we now know them to have is so that the man could see her emotional ways and then realize how much more powerful his mind is, and could develop an appreciation for the rationale that God has given him. And he'd be able to say, hey, God made me mentally more powerful than He made her, and I'm going to use that greater power. It says nothing for how He should use that greater power, but I do believe that one of the reasons that God made women with the female mindset that we now know them to have is so that men could see what it's like not to have the male rationale. not to be able to reason like a man, and men could then appreciate the propensity for rationale that God has given men. So I'm not saying that men should talk down to women, but in the man's mind, he should know, hey, God made me mentally more powerful than he made her. And what you actually say to the woman is another issue. But you as a man should appreciate the rationale that God has given you when you see a woman who is irrational. But like I have said, I believe it's possible for women to develop rationale, even if it's difficult. And I actually want to see women go through that difficult process, which I haven't laid out, I understand. But sometimes just knowing uh, that that rationale is attainable, knowing that something is possible will cause you to work hard and figure out how to attain it. And really, it's just a matter of you know thinking hard and mimicking my mannerisms as set forth in this video, and also going back to what I said about the problems that I've dealt with in terms of the administration of DC Mayor Muriel Bowser, uh, and how I looked back on the male administrations that I did have my disagreements with, but they went better. Not in terms of the content of the disagreement, but just in terms of how the conversation was functional, and we at least left understanding each other, even if we didn't like each other. And so yeah, I have given you some stuff on how to be rational, but I'm gonna leave it right there and end this video and possibly end this playlist, but I might decide to come back sometime in the future and add another video to the playlist, but I have no immediate plans to do that. So let's call it quits.